Hi everyone, Chad here with Living the Dream Real Estate Group. I have Mr. Jack Gibson with us today from Vernon Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electrical. And he's here to help us with some of our questions. As we've been hearing from you, there's a couple of questions that we've had with regards to how do I winterize and how do I get prepared for winter. So one of the things that we would like to do with Jake today is we want to walk through some of the steps that our clients and those watching the podcast today that can be putting or implementing into their maintenance program or things that they need to be doing and getting somebody like you involved. So why don't you walk us through a little bit about what it means to demonstrate, what it means to do our winterizing for a home.
Yeah, that'd be great. So we'll start by, I'll just show what equipment you have here. So we've got a natural gas furnace here and a heat pump. The main brains of the system for the heat pump is outside. We'll touch on that later. But we preach about the furnace filter. Okay. Now, this is a large 4-inch filter. You can get up to 5 inches. They'll last probably 6 months. Most furnaces only have about a 1-inch filter. The standard that everybody thinks is change it every 3 months. Change it when it's dirty. Change it when it's clean. Don't wait till it's dirty. This is expensive equipment. This is probably a $15,000 to $20,000 system. And for a $15 filter, you're risking the life of that system. So make sure to keep that filter changed. Change it monthly, every 2 months. Just keep it changed. Now, another thing you can do is you can come and just visually inspect it. So you're going to look through for things like water, rust, a smell, a rotten egg smell, natural gas if it's leaking. If that happens, there's a little valve right here. You can shut that off. If the valve is going kind of perpendicular to the pipe, it's off. If it's with the pipe, it's on. The other things you can check are just in and around. Make sure the drains aren't leaking. There's no water. Your thermostat, you want to make sure that it's turned to heating if you're switching to heating. We get a lot of service calls and they just haven't switched it to heating. So that's something. I guess really from an inside standpoint, that's all I want you to do because everything else in here has electrical. I don't want you in there testing it because you could get electrocuted. That's where you call a contractor. If you're having issues where it's not running great, it's cycling on and off, you want to get a contractor in. But always make sure your filters change first, because that could be the problem. So yeah, that's your furnace home inspection.
So you know what, in there, one of the things that Jake touched on is there's some stuff that we can be doing on our own, but there is stuff that you need to be doing. Yeah. So can you just outline that again, like a couple of things that where you want to get somebody like yourself involved?
Yeah, for sure. So if you look at hiring a licensed contractor to do a furnace inspection, we do a 31-point inspection. Now, when I went through what you could do, it's like check the filter, visually inspect it, look for issues. If you see issues, call us. But we're checking things like motor amperages. So you've got an inducer motor here. This is your exhaust motor. We're checking the amperage on that, comparing that amperage against the manufacturer specifications. If we're seeing things like it's pulling too much amperage, we're starting to recognize that it's nearing the end of its life. Now, if it's nearing the end of its life, you've got two options. Run it till it dies, or preventatively change it so it doesn't die in the middle of the night. The other things are checking gas pressures. This is your gas valve here. We check to make sure that the gas it's putting out is the correct amount of gas. Because what will happen is when we're putting out too much, you could be overheating your heat exchanger. The other thing we'll check that relates to gas is your combustion. So I guess where it gets challenging here, for especially if a homeowner can't check it, these are expensive tools and it's dangerous to do. But if you're overheating your furnace because your filter doesn't stay changed or you got too much gas, the heat exchanger can end up cracking. Now, if that heat exchanger cracks, you basically are now letting your exhaust into your airstream. Right? Things like carbon monoxide in the airstream, obviously very unsafe and unhealthy and dangerous. So that's where you need to get a licensed professional to check it.
Okay, so there's some of the things that we can be doing for winterization. Now, this is just one part. So this system here Can you outline just a couple of things about this particular system? Because there's other parts that are outside, which we'll check on in a second here. But why don't you outline a couple of things that are other parts, like what are these tubes for?
Yeah,
all these kind of stuff.
Okay, so you've got two white tubes here. One is exhaust, so it's your exhaust pipe that I was talking about. So the gas gets burnt, mixes, and then the motor blows that exhaust out. But for proper combustion, you need fresh air, right? Now, this is a fresh air tube. So if it ever gets plugged outside, your furnace is going to trip off and not run. So that's these pipes are important. Outside, you might see them outside, and they might be a little bit unsightly. People don't like them, they could cover them up. Do not cover them up because your furnace won't work. This here is your condensate drain for your furnace, and your AC. This needs to stay cleaned and clear so it can drain properly. A lot of little pressure switches and things like that in there. Now, the other thing I want to touch on is how this system operates. Because this is a heat pump system, you're going to run basically spring and fall. You're going to heat your house with the heat pump, and then you're going to switch over in the winter, and your thermostat automatically does it to heat with the furnace. Now, there are two types of heat pumps, and we'll get into that later, cold climate and standard temperature heat pumps. But this system, basically, that's how they're all programmed, is they heat with the heat pump first because it's more energy efficient, and then it switches over to heat with the gas furnace.
Okay. All right, so now we've talked about some of the stuff that we're going to do inside. What we're going to do, we're going to head outside to look at some of the things that you can be taking care of outside in the other parts of your system. Okay, we are outside now, and you want to explain some of what we have out here?
Yeah, for sure. So this is typically known as a condenser, but in a heat pump situation, they've simply termed it the outdoor unit because...
Original.
Yeah, right. But what it does is in air conditioning mode, the indoor portion I was talking about that's above the furnace, in air conditioning mode, it absorbs heat, and then that heat travels through the piping out to this, the fan's running, and it gets rid of the heat. In heat pump mode, this absorbs heat, which people, it sounds a little bit crazy. It could be minus 30, it's still absorbing heat. You can actually absorb heat down to about minus 460 degrees. That's absolute zero. But this absorbs heat, and then it travels back in near the furnace to discharge it. Now, from a maintenance standpoint, this is a heat exchanger. So if we can't get airflow across this because it's dirty, it's not going to absorb or get rid of heat, right? Now, on the furnace, you've got the furnace filter, but there's no filter out here. So this is left to yourself, the homeowner, or bringing a contractor in to keep it clean. Really, really simple. You don't need high pressure. You don't need fancy tools. When we do it, obviously, we check a lot more things, again, amperages and stuff like that. But all you need to do is take a garden hose. First, start off. This is your service disconnect. Okay, just over on the wall here. This just pulls out, and then there's no power. Now we can come in, close this, and we can run water through all this safely. And you're just going to start at the top, and you just rinse it around all four sides. Because if you don't do one of the sides, 25% of your heating capacity is gone.
Okay.
So keeping this really clean. Now, with an air conditioner, at least once a year. With a heat pump, at least twice a year. Usually we recommend spring and fall, right? Keep it clean. If it's clean, it's efficient.
Okay, so one thing about that is I've come across some where we've had some... muted myself for a second there. So... when I've come across some people that they live in an area where it's a little bit more dusty or there is a little bit more dirt that's flying around, so probably want to do that more regularly than just a couple of times a year, right?
Most definitely. I mean, you're walking around your house, check it, take a quick look. We're a lot of rocks where we're standing right now. That's good. You're not getting a lot of dust. Mind you, there's a lot of new construction going on, so you're getting more dust. So you have to be aware of your environment and clean it as much as you need to. We say a minimum of twice a year. The more you clean it, the better. Now, smoke seasons, things like that. That is really bad for these. You're going to want to clean it after smoke season as well, right? If we have a really bad fire year, you're going to want to come in and clean it after that as well.
Okay, now one thing that I've had or I've seen people do is that they've actually got a cover that they put over top of this.
Yeah.
Do we want to be doing that with this one?
Not with this one, no. It's you're heating with it. Air conditioners you can cover. It's actually kind of bit of a debate in the HVAC industry is whether or not to put a cover on air conditioners. There's pros and cons. Talk to a contractor like us and we can explain if it's right for you. But with a heat pump, never cover it. Never. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you pulled out our plug here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what do we need to know about putting it back in, or when it comes to winter or summer for this?
So with a heat pump, you're always going to want to put this back in because it won't heat.
Right.
With air conditioning, if you just had a gas furnace and AC, you don't have to have your power coming to this all winter. So you can turn this off or leave this out. You don't want to lose it, though, because if you lose it, you're calling us and you're buying a new one.
So we don't want that.
Now, it'll actually go in upside down. And if it goes in upside down, that's how people store it without sending power to the unit. You just have to remember that you put it in upside down, which is really easy to know because it's really loose in there.
Okay, yeah, and there,
you can see how, I don't know if I can zoom in, there's copper tips. So those copper tips are getting plugged in, just like an electrical outlet.
Yeah.
Now, if we flip it upside down, it's going into more of just a holder. So when I put it back in, upside down, not that you can see this straight here, but you can maybe hear it, it's super loose. Now, if I put it in properly, you can't hear it.
Great.
Now, power's on, it's a heat pump. Now, they'll continue to have heating. We put that in upside down, we're getting a service call because their heat pump won't run.
Okay. All right, well, we're going to head back inside, and we're going to take care of a couple more things just inside our mechanical room, and then we'll be right back. All right, we're back in now, and we've taken care of all of our winterizing for this year. Now, one of the things that we wanted to talk to Jake while we had him here is to discuss some of the changes that we're seeing inside the political landscape when they're coming to some of our rebates and some of the incentives that we can get. There's been a push from the government side of things to get us doing, pushing us more to electrical. So as we move from the fossil fuels to different sources for our power on this, what are some things or some new things that you're seeing coming down the pipes?
Yeah, so heat pumps are the main thing, right? Whether it's a central air system like this, it could be a gas furnace with it, but it could also be a fully electric air handler. Going to a cold climate heat pump. Now, that's one system. There's the other systems that a lot of people see around unit mounted up on the wall because they don't have ductwork in the house, right? Generally a baseboard heated house, a ductless heat pump. We're seeing those all over the place. They're extremely efficient. They're quiet. Every room that you got one in has its own thermostat control. A lot of nice benefits outside of, some people don't like having the big bulky thing up there. But if you're heated with baseboard and you don't want to tear apart the basement to put in a full duct system, that's kind of your option. Now, when it comes to energy efficiency, this is something I've spent a lot of time educating myself on, but there's standard temperature heat pumps, which generally you'll see in the US. You will see a lot in Canada, but what's becoming a lot more prevalent is the cold climate heat pumps. Now, a cold climate heat pump, obviously, it's going to be able to heat down to a colder temperature outside and a lot more efficiently. Now, with that, obviously, we have seen an increase in price, but the efficiency is incredible. So, not to get too technical, but basically, an electric baseboard heater is 100% efficient, and a cold climate heat pump is, say, 350% efficient. Which means for every $1 you put into baseboard heating, you get $1 of heat out. But for every $1 of energy you put into a cold climate heat pump, you get $3.50 worth of heat out. So significantly more efficient.
Okay, yeah. That's a big difference. It's pretty sure.
It's a huge difference.
Yeah. Well, that's something that we can obviously be looking at just as you're thinking about new things that you want to be putting in your house. Maybe you're doing a renovation and you're thinking about, well, hey, what kind of a system do we want to use next? That's some really great advice. So as we got a couple more things here to cross off our list, but what does a person need to know about heat pumps and the advantages, disadvantages of them specifically? Okay,
so the advantages and disadvantages of heat pumps. A heat pump is a fully electric system. So generally what we would recommend is to have what's called a dual fuel, which is what this system is. It's a gas furnace as your backup heat source, with the heat pump as your primary heat source. Now, the reason I like that is because if for whatever reason electrically you lost power, we could get you heat through the gas furnace because you still have gas. So having two heat sources is nice. Now, the big pro of a heat pump is that efficiency. The technology that's in them is incredible. They're extremely efficient. Now, the challenge right now, the con, is when you look at the price of fossil fuel or natural gas versus the price of hydro, right? Now, what we're told, and I'm going to use Fortis BC data, but we're told 2 degrees is the balance point, where heating your house down to 2 degrees with a heat pump is more cost effective. I'm not talking about efficiency, but cost effective.
Okay.
And then below 2 degrees, natural gas is more cost effective. Now, if you're heating with electricity or propane, a heat pump is always more cost effective. But if you're on natural gas, that's your balance point, is right in around that 2 degree mark.
Okay, well, that's really good for us to be mindful of, so thank you for pointing that out. Now, Jake, we've had you learning some really good things today. So when we're talking to you as like our listeners and where you're coming from, tell us about some of the different areas that you service and maybe a couple of things that you and your company, you do a little bit differently than some of the others that are out there.
Yeah, for sure. So our main area of service is Vernon and the surrounding areas. So we get into Coldstream, Lake Country, Armstrong, up through Silver Star. But we're really focused on this area, keeping it tight. We want to make sure we're giving the best service possible. And if we've got to drive 45 minutes to an hour somewhere, it's hard to really give that service. So we like to recommend contractors that might be a little bit closer to you. Now, as far as what we do different, we're very education based. We want to share. You have a question about how to do something or check something on your furnace yourself, call us. We are happy to share because we want to build that relationship, and we want you to be able to take care of the simple things yourself. We don't feel good about charging you $140 to come and turn your thermostat to heating or to change your filter, because that's all that's wrong. So you can make a simple phone call, and we're happy to give you some tips and tricks. As far as other things that make us really different, we educate ourselves as much as possible. So staying up to date on all the newest technology to be able to pass that information on to our clientele.
Right on. Well, we just want to thank Jake again for coming and spending some time with us and learning how we can be working on our homes, maintaining our homes. So if you have any questions for us for the next time that we do an installment with Jake, please just send us your questions, PM us, email us, text us. We'll get to those questions the next time. So for all of you out there, here in the Okanagan, we want you to live your dreams. So let's ask those questions. Let's get at her and have an amazing day.